Welcome back. Today it's all about Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. I was recently invited to a small webinar where some people from Adobe talked to us about the upcoming updates coming to Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. And by the time you see this video, which should be Tuesday 21st, these updates should start rolling out and it will be Lightroom Classic 14.0. So this video is going to be a short one, perfect if you want to watch it while drinking your coffee in the morning, your tea, whatever you drink in the morning. Since I don't have the new update with me, I'm just going to talk about those new features coming in. And those apply for both Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. The first improvement will all be about performance. I think every time they update the software, they're trying to make things run more smoothly in the background, which is great. The second feature concerns Sony shooters, and yes, they are finally bringing Sony tethering with Lightroom Classic 14.0. I believe this was a feature long requested by Sony shooters, and that makes sense. So with this new update, you'll be able to shoot tethered through a Lightroom Classic and use Sony bodies. And they said they work really close with Sony to make sure it's all kind of work very well together. And on top of that, they talked about a way of connecting multiple camera to Lightroom Classic. And while you won't be able to press the shutters like at the same time on all of those cameras, you can somehow connect all of these cameras and then switch to which one you want to release the shutter from. So it seems to be a pretty cool features, and I won't be able to test that because I'm not a Sony shooter. The third feature is concerned lens blur. It was a feature brought with the previous version of Lightroom Classic and Lightroom, but it was in beta mode. And as of Lightroom Classic 14.0 and the upcoming version of Lightroom, it's no longer in beta mode. And on top of that, they really made some improvement to the interface. Before that, it was kind of confusing the way you could work with the lens boost, and depending on how you wanted, how much blur you wanted, which regions you wanted to be in focus and out of focus. And from now on, it's much simpler. And on top of that, they made some great improvement to the overall quality you can get with lens blur. They also told us that lens blur is able to take advantage of the iPhone depth map coming from a portrait mode shot. Before that, you could change what was in focus and what was not in focus through your photo app on your iPhone. But now you can also import those images in Lightroom or Lightroom Classic and still have access to that depth map, so you can change what's in focus and you can do further edits through Lightroom Classic. So that's great because I believe that the lens blur features sometimes create a much better result than what you could get on the iPhone portrait mode, at least when I do iPhone photos with my iPhone 13 Pro. And finally, when it comes to the fourth features, I think it was one of the most requested features by the Lightroom community, and it is generative fill right inside Lightroom. No longer need to go to Photoshop to clean your images. So yes, Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Mobile will now have access to the same generative fill that you can find in Photoshop. And just like the lens blur feature that was available last year that in beta mode, the generative fill will start as a beta. And when you use the feature, you'll see a small window when you can give feedback to the Adobe team if you are happy with the result you got from a generative fill. And that's very important because during that webinar, they really told us that it's important to give them feedback, whether it's through the small window you can find on Lightroom Classic or going through the Lightroom forums and ask for new features. They are really taking into account all of that feedback to improve the features that are currently in Lightroom and some feature requested by user. For example, I believe that tons and tons of people asked for the Sony tethering and it's finally here. So feedback is important, and they really told us that the Lightroom and the Adobe team are listening to us and are listening to the feedback we are giving them. And to come back to generative fill, which is the big thing about that new update coming in, is that it works slightly differently than what you're used to in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you have to select the area you want to remove or fill in, or use the pen tool, and then you have a small window that asks you to write the prompt, when you can say, I want to fill this with sand or sky or whatever you want. Well, it will work slightly differently on Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. There is no prompt, so you simply paint over the area you want to remove, and then the software will do it for you. And I really like that because most of the time I've never used the prompts. I just simply clicked on generate. So that's a good thing that it's more simple in Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. And if you follow the Adobe Nav that took place in London a couple of weeks ago, as I talked about the new software and the new version of Photoshop, you may have heard that those software will use Firefly 3. Well, for Lightroom and Lightroom Classic, they'll still be using the Firefly 2, at least for the moment. And so during the webinar, we asked if when using generative fill inside Lightroom or Lightroom Classic, would it be using our credits? And they couldn't really give us a straight answer. But basically, yes, it will be using credits, but it won't be enforced the same way. So I don't really know what it means. But basically, I think it's just going to be during the beta mode at least, they won't really take all of your credits. Another great feature about Generative Fill inside Lightroom and Lightroom Classic is that you'll have the ability to copy-paste adjustment between a photo, and that's also applied to Lens Blur, by the way. For example, let's say that you're shooting a series of portraits in front of a wall, and you wish to remove a small object on the wall or a stain or something of that matter. Well, since the framing is similar, you'll be able to copy-paste the Generative Fill throughout the series, and in theory, Generative Fill should be able to locate that same stain throughout the series and remove it in one go. So it still needs to be used and tested, but that's very exciting because you won't have to go through each image and then Generative Fill each time for like a series of, let's say, 15 portraits, for example. But again, we finally have Generative Fill inside Lightroom and Lightroom Classic, and it's going to be a game changer. I think it was one of the most requested features, if not the most requested features, by the Lightroom community, because most photographers, the only time they really jump into Photoshop was when they need to remove bigger objects in the background, stuff that maybe the stem tool or the healing tool within Lightroom couldn't really handle. So they would do the round trip between Lightroom and Photoshop, and then you would get that big PSD file or TIFF file. And it was quite cumbersome if you had to do that on a series of 20, 50 photos sometimes. And of course, it will still need to be tested because since the Lightroom and Photoshop will use a different Firefly mode, you may still get better results sometime when using Photoshop. And those are the features coming to Lightroom and Lightroom Classics on Tuesday, May 21st. So make sure you update your software to take advantage of Generative Fill. And I'm also going to make a videos where I take you through those new features once I can get my hand on the software. So make sure you subscribe. That's for me, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.